Where my girls at? Where my girls at? Independent, free spirit. Ooh, it's something serious. Where my girls at? We link up in a cool minute. Where my girls at? It's going down, down. Where my girls at? It's going down, down. It's going down tonight. We going out tonight. Yeah, right. We going out tonight. It's going down tonight. Yeah, right. It's going down tonight. We going out tonight. Yeah, right. We going out tonight. It's going down tonight. Yeah, right.
It is time to link up. It is time to link up because it is time for We Got Issues. It is time for We Got Issues. Where are my girls at? Well, guess what? We are all together again, back together again. You cannot hear me on Comrex. Michael, do you have me? You don't have me. Okay. You got me? Okay, Gloria and Sabrina are saying they cannot hear me. Are they
okay? We got you now.
End?
Yep, we got.
There we go. There we go. There we go. There we go. We got issues from the top of the show to the bottom of the show. We always got issues. We are some on the move women. Can you believe we are back together again? I mean, you got to listen to We Got Issues every day because you never know. Last week we were in Maui. Gloria left us and went to Lanai. We're going to hear a little bit about that private jet in just a minute. Okay. Because I came back first class, but I was not in a private jet. Okay, so I want to hear about that. And our girlfriend, Lady Chrisette Ellis, is on the radio, not on Facebook today because she is in Viva Las Vegas. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but she's going to share some of her Vegas issues with us today. This is your girl, Caterina Harris Earl. Today we are talking about really, I mean, it's such a heavy day, y'all. I mean, you got to laugh. You got to keep it light. But honestly, there is not a person listening to the show, listening to my voice who I know is not sad, especially as they have begun to show the faces of those babies on TV. And you just see their precious faces whenever they say 10 years old and murdered. That should never be in a sentence together. And so as it happens, way before we went to Hawaii, I had booked this amazing, thank you, Sabrina. Sabrina said, you need to subscribe to Newsbreak. And one day on Newsbreak, because you get local news too, I got this powerful story that is taking place right here in my neighborhood in Antioch, California. And I immediately sent a message to Tamisha, City Councilwoman Tamisha, who is on today, and she is going to tell us her story. And then when I look back and I see what is taking place in our world today, who better to speak to it than someone who's working at the city council level, someone who works directly with the schools. And praise God, it is not in this community right here as well. However, there has been gun violence here. So we're going to talk about that today. So we are going to get to our special guest that you will love getting to know her story. And we'll talk about what is on everybody's mind today, Tamisha Torres Walker. However, before we get there, we're going to talk about some good stuff. So Gloria, Sabrina, Chrisette, how you doing? So Gloria, I'm going right to you. How's your tan? Okay, you have 5 more days in Hawaii than we did. My mama looked at your feet and she said, they are black. Okay. I said, it's a good thing, baby. It's a good thing. So how you doing, Gloria?
Oh, my goodness. Mama Pert nailed it. She nailed it. That was my number one priority. My number one priority was to come back crispy. Everybody who sees me is supposed to say to me, where you been? Where you been? Where you been? Where you been? And, I have to stay out there for a minute. But it was an amazing trip. The final day, though, y'all, the final day was all day in the ocean. All day in the ocean. Kim was like, I can't believe you in the ocean. I mean, the waves were kicking and he was trying to teach me how to dive deep into the wave, and I got smashed. I thought my swimsuit was filled up with me, but it was all sand. It was sand everywhere. But I figured I'd microdermabrade my whole body with the sand. So that was fabulous. And then they brought us back in a private jet. And it was a exquisite jet. It wasn't just a jet, it was an exquisite jet. And to watch them with those kinds of seats, with that kind of service, when we got to Honolulu, they put us in this back room. I mean, you guys, we have to always go bigger because people are living differently than we're experiencing. They are living a life that's different than what we're experiencing. Y'all, the pilot put the luggage in the plane, took the luggage out the plane. He personally weighed it. He was like all over it. And it was a guy and a woman that, co-piloted the jet together. It was beautiful. What you see is different because you don't go so high up. So you get to see the landscape even better. It was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful. We had a great time. Great time.
Mm-hmm. We saw you in seat 1 and 2. Okay. We saw you. That wasn't blocking your view, but the pilot. I saw you. Make sure you're following her on social media. Go find that. Gloria, just one more thing. The room, your hotel suite in Lanai. I mean, honestly, I mean, you have stayed in some of the best hotels in the entire world. Who does that?
Okay,
the wood bathtub. Oh my goodness.
Y'all, for real. Oh, and it was fabulous. It is a softer feel in a wood bathtub. That was crazy, you guys. They had all these lights that, it wasn't on and off. It was daytime, relax, nightlife, off. It was just, and then the heated toilet suites. I know y'all talked about the toilet seats last week, but we went back to the toilet seats. But the toilet, seriously, you walk in the bathroom and the toilet seat goes up. There's no up and down. There's no getting mad at your man because he didn't do that. It's all automatic, We're walking around here like, well, flush, doggone it, flush. Ain't no flushing going on here in the bathroom.
Self-serve.
Look, they looked up the room. The room was about $4,500 a night for this room. Wow. It crazy. Was amazing. The wood on the floors, the wood on the walls, the mirrors behind the wood, the different lights going on in all kind of ways. It was 2 full baths for 1 bedroom, 2 full baths. It was just, we couldn't even use the other one. It was decadent. I mean, and then the service, you have the room and then you have the service and the crystal glasses, Kim walking around talking about clean, clean, clean. Oh yeah, these are real. These are real crystal and this is really high quality crystal. It was fabulous. The view was amazing. The binoculars were amazing. The service was incredible. They run around just making sure you have everything. I mean, we gave the guy, asked him for some change. He said, I'll be right back. Came back 5, 10, 20. I mean, and then the spa experience. 3 people said it was the best massage they have ever had in their life. Mine was great because I've had some great massages, but they were like serious. So it was an awesome experience. The 4 Seasons in Lanai, for real, is an experience. It's an experience.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Sabrina, how you doing? Gloria, we did not do our Hawaii show yet. We're going to wait till Chris is back, and you got to come back, y'all, girlfriends and guy friends, because we're going to talk all things Hawaii. We're going to do a Hawaii show for real, but we are all living vicariously through you. How you doing, Sabrina?
I'm good as can be, just devastated by this news of yesterday. My heart is just so hurt again and again and again. I know we're going to talk about it. I just didn't even know what to post because I'm really sick and tired of praying for Uvalde. I mean, the name of the town. We need more than prayers. We need action. We've got to do something or it's going to keep happening over. I mean, it's just been happening over and over again. So, like many of the
and we got to stop saying it's going to keep happening because it is happening. Just like you said, it's happening. Yeah,
that's right. So let's go to Chrisette out in Vegas and let's get to our guest. I don't have nothing else to say right now. I really don't.
Chrisette.
Yes.
the loss of life. Sometimes so little guilty to be having, living your life and knowing that there are others that are in so much pain and are hurting. So I heard the prayers going to all of those families, members that, they disappeared to the school and, sometimes they were in the wrong places at the wrong time. But no, they were in the right place. But then something tragic happened to them. So we got to remember these families. I put myself in their situation, and I don't know. I mean, there's only so much that you can take, but we absolutely will keep it in prayer. So, Katrina, I'm going to throw it back to you because I am so excited to hear from your guests today. We have to do something about this gun violence.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. Thank you. Thank you. I am so grateful to introduce her. And the first thing that I want our guest to do is to brag on herself and tell you about her story of literally from prison to power, how she is making a change, her background, and how she has used that and turned that around for good. Tamisha Torres Walker is a co-founder and executive director of the Safe Return Project in Contra Costa County. That's the county I live in. We literally live a few miles from each other. And newly elected city council member of the Antioch City Council District 1 seat. She was elected, y'all, in November of 2020. Michael, go and give us some applause up in there. Woo woo. New. Tamisha has more than 10 years, y'all, of community organizing experience in cities impacted by trauma, mass criminalization, economic inequity, and I'm going to add it, gun violence. Her educational experience includes professional training in research and public policy advocacy, violence prevention strategies, conflict mediation. I mean, could God have orchestrated it better for us to have her as our guest today? To reduce gun violence, and a bachelor's in psychology from the California State University at East Bay. We're going to talk about it all. We got a little bit of time right before the break as we bring her in, but we're going to hit on violence prevention, community empowerment, public safety, youth justice, and of course, all of this takes money. So we got to add some more money to the budget in every city for the right things. Can you go ahead and bring in our guest, City Council member Tamisha Torres Walker? Woo woo! Welcome to We Got Issues. Thank you, Tamisha. Your story, your background, it's amazing. As you were sharing it with me, I was so impressed. We have about 3 minutes before we go to break, so begin telling us your story. You might have to pick it up after break if we don't get it all in, but tell us where you started from the bottom, and now you're here. Let us know. Talk to us.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we got you. Great.
Thank you so much for the invitation to be here today and share my story and the great work that's happening in Antioch right now. Tamisha Torres Walker. I am currently an Antioch resident, but I was raised in Richmond, California. Richmond is in my blood. That's where my family is, all of my safety nets. And where my first activism started and where some of my first traumas happened. And so, I grew up, in the 80s and, my family was involved, there were guns, drugs, everything you could imagine that a young person should not be surrounded by existed in my life. But everybody who loved me always told me I was going to be somebody, that I was going to do something different, that I was going to make a change for our family. But the conditions I was living under didn't match up with what people had hoped for me. And it just so happened that I had a lot of rough times as a young person. My first incarceration was at 17 for self-defense. I was arrested 22 times all before I turned 18. And then my last incarceration was when I was 26 years old. I was 26 years old, a single mom with 2 sons. My youngest was 2 at that time. My oldest is 25 and I just turned 40. So I had him when I was 15. So just a lot of, raising myself, going in and out of the foster system, being homeless and on the street, arrest after arrest. And things really went downhill even more after my brother was murdered. He was killed in 2005, shot 43 times, 3 times in the head in Richmond. coming home from his first job. And that was a year where we had upwards to 45 homicides. And my life started to spiral out of control after that. I was an older sister. I had raised my brother when my mom was out, in the streets. And so it was like losing a child, even though he was my brother. So it was hard. And so just really getting into like alcohol and experimenting with drugs, and couldn't pull myself out of a depression and a rut. And I ended up almost facing 10 years in prison at 26 years old for arson of an inhabited structure. I was so under the influence that I don't even remember committing the offense. And I just woke up in jail, all over the news, and had to choose to start my life over.
Tamisha, I mean, everyone's listening. They want to hear your story, and especially we want to hear a little bit more about it and how you turned it around to rise to this success story of city council. Who better to serve and to help to stop the violence than someone who came from that environment and really understands? So we will be right back after this break, and we'll have you pick up right where you left off. Stay tuned to We Got Issues. Give us a call, 313-778-7600. We want to hear from you. Well, we are back from the break. Tamisha, you have us listening in, and your story is a story that some people certainly that are listening in may have lived inside of that, but everyone who's listening in, this is the story that we know takes place. Those of you that are listening and not from an area familiar with California, Richmond certainly has amazing neighborhoods, but it is definitely a region and an area that's known for its violence. When I just listened, pulled these stats, y'all, honestly, when I pulled the stats for gun violence in 2022, I studied it for about 10 minutes because I couldn't believe this was for I can't even say 1 year because it's May. I literally could not believe. I was like, are these really today is May 25th. Total number of gun violence deaths that have happened from everything, including accidental, in 2022 is 17,208. 7,600 is homicide, murder, unintentional. 9,500 suicide. It's 213 mass shootings. I just can't. 141 children killed and 299 injured. The numbers are unfathomable. And so before we talk specifically about what you're doing now, pick up where you left off, Tamisha, and tell us more about your story.
Thank you. Yes, I think the first is like in organizing, we always say the first revolution is internal, right? And so the first work you have to do is on yourself. And so after growing up in the environment that I did, and I see myself just incarcerated, sitting in jail, and I had to figure out like what happened, how did I end up here? And it was so odd because even the deputies would say Walker, because they call your last name or your number. Why are you here? You follow all the rules. You don't get rolled up, nothing. You're not the person who always in and out of here. How did you end up here? And I couldn't answer that question. And after I started I said, my bunkie was in there for murder, an older woman. And I said, well, what do I do? She had been sitting down for 5 years. She gave me a Bible and said, start from the beginning. And that's all I had really is God and myself, because a lot of times when you're incarcerated, you don't have family sending you money, taking your phone calls, sending you mail. You isolated from your community. And a lot of times I always tell people, I hate to say this publicly, but it was real for me for what I was called to do in this moment was God needed to save my life. That's how I ended up in jail. And I had to sit down and focus on what are the parts of me that needed to heal? Who did I need to forgive? And the first person I needed to forgive was my mom, because she was the first person who was supposed to take care of me. And I started to learn a lot about myself and what I needed to do. And so I just did a lot of self-work, but I also recognized that trauma leaves a scar. So I'm going to always be triggered by every experience of the police raid in my house and police violence and community violence. And so how do I kind of live with those scars, but use them to rebuild my life for me and my sons? And so when I was released after a year with, a couple strikes and, took a deal, because who want to do 10 years in prison? It was just my first offense. My first serious offense, 26 years old. My public defender told me, you too young you still have a lot more ahead of you. And so I took a deal, came home, did a lot more self-work, and started to think about, well, what do I want to do in the world? Because I can't go back there, and I can't allow the things that happened in my past to continue to control where I want to go in my future. And God just happened to put all of the right people in my path to help me make those decisions. And I remember my first night home, I tried so hard not to drink, right? Or get high, because it's hard, because you want to check out. What do I do now? So I drank 7 pots of coffee, which probably is the best thing, because I think the caffeine had me more. I was like, Lord, And
Well,
and
that's some discipline.
yeah, woke
I
up the
mean,
next
that's some
opened,
discipline.
yeah, opened every curtain in the house, recognized that for my whole life I was living in darkness and that I wasn't
Mm.
no more, and started to try to figure out how to rebuild.
Tamisha, I want you, before we open up and go to the girlfriends, and we have a caller, I just want you to say, because we look at the person who committed, the 18-year-old who committed the murders yesterday, clearly something took place in his life. We don't know the whole story, but something took place in his life that caused him to make that turn. What can you just tell us right before we go to our caller? What was it that caused you to make the turn for the positive, and what do you think? One or two things aside from the major self work that you talked about.
What forced me to make the turn was I didn't recognize who I was or who I was called to be in the world. Like, even just calling me Tamisha and by my name and not my nickname or my street name was different for me.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so that's what made me turn, was that, like, I could not I wasn't allowed to be who I really was in the world. And I needed that opportunity. And
Mhm.
I decided that that's the direction I was gonna be, is who I am and not who people expect me to be.
Wow.
Mm.
As simple as that sounds, how beautiful that is, because we think of people just being you, who you really were designed to be. We're going to go to Daryl, our caller. We are so grateful, Daryl, that you called in. We know that you can relate. You've been a guest on our show and have added so much value. Daryl, how are you? Thanks for calling. We got issues.
I am tremendously blessed. I'm very, very grateful that you have the time to come in my sister and about great things that she's done in her transformation. Uh, Very powerful topic. And I would say and ask her and address to her, I served time in prison to my sister. I did 29 years in prison. I would say that those who are closer to the problem are closer to the solution. Uh, and not only are we dealing with mass shootings, but we're dealing with a lot of violence in our community. It's terrible in the city of Detroit. And I'm focused more on the schools and in the community, and I'm trauma informed. What would you say about a peace program, for your community and for urban cities and for America? Yes, we're so prone and connected to violence and prone to violence because it's in our video games, it's in our homes, it's in our communities everywhere. How would you, what would you do as a city councilwoman? I'm very, very proud of your transformation. You stepping up to the plate, serving in the way that you're doing. But as a leader in city government and as well as a leader in the community, what would you do and what would you push in terms of peace in our schools and our community? What type of agenda do you have for that? And thank you for addressing this, because this is something that I'm involved in on a daily basis, and I'm very interested. We don't have time for creeds and all of that type of stuff because our people are suffering and they are struggling. So I'll let you address that, and I'd like to connect with you offline and share some of the things that we're doing here in the city of Detroit, because I think that teamwork makes a great better.
Excellent. Thank you, Daryl. Thank you. Tamisha, we have
A couple minutes before we go to break. So if you would respond to that, and then we'll probably have to pick it up right after the break.
Yeah, thank you so much, brother. One thing I will say is that I was talking to a friend earlier today, and we were talking about gun control, gun sense, responsible gun ownership. Should guns exist in society? And I said, violence as a culture is the problem, right? It's the violence that's permeates our communities, our culture. If you took away a gun, I would use a rock. If you took away a rock, I would use a stick.
Wow.
If you took away the stick, I would use a knife. If you took away the knife, I would use my fist, because we have been conditioned to act that violence is how it just exists in society. Violence is the issue. How do we, like you said, do the work to create scared space and peace, where we don't have to use the rock, the stick, the knife, the gun? And a lot of that is going to take a commitment to real conversations about healing, especially for our communities who experience day-to-day violence, and our solutions.
When we come back, I'm going to ask you, Tamisha, I know the Antioch City Council was working to seek a grant to help with gun violence because the surge in gun violence was up 40%. You guys, we're talking about this issue. 27 school shootings have taken place so far in 2022. It has to stop. And so call us 313-778-7600. We'll be right back. All righty. Thank you so much for listening in to We Got Issues. There's always issues to talk about. There's always something new. Did you guys peep that new commercial? Okay, those of you on the social media, you don't hear it, but we just heard our latest commercial. We get excited. You hear your own commercial. You're like, oh, it's a new commercial. Well, make sure you tune in to We Got Issues every single day, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern time. And today we have an amazing guest with a powerful story. If you missed the top of the show, you got to go to our Facebook page or YouTube page and listen to Tamisha Walker's story. We're talking to talking to her now about where she is now as city council person. And we're going to dig deep and talk specifically about the school shootings and what effect a city council person can have to stop this from happening in our community, your community, in more communities. What what you can do. And so, Sabrina, I'm going to pass it to you just to give your insight and any questions you have, and then we'll get Tamisha to chime in more about that specifically.
Excellent. Tamisha, welcome. Thank you for being here. Amazing story, a shining example of just perseverance and resilience, of wanting to turn your life around. You know, when you talked about being in that prison cell and it was just you and a Bible, someone gave you a Bible and said, hey, rebuild your life. Obviously, a lot of people have that opportunity but choose not to. And so I just think you have something special in terms of wanting to make a change and saying, when I come out, I will no longer live in this dark, dark world. So kudos to you. We just want that for so many of our other brothers and sisters who are incarcerated, because they get out and they go back to that same dark life. So when you talk about rebuilding and you talked about using your scars to rebuild, what else did you do? Was it clearly just the word that fed you to see something different in you? Or was there motivation around you? What else was it? Or was it just the Bible?
The funny thing about reading, about having the opportunity to read the Bible in solitude, was that, like, I got to interpret every word for myself. And I got to decide what it meant for me and what it meant for my life. And I kept a journal. And right before I was getting ready to be released, I came across the scripture. I can't remember which one it is, but what I got out of that, what I wrote down, was that God said He gonna give me back. He gonna give me back everything that was taken. Nobody's gonna be able to take it from me again and give me more. But I just have to do what I need to do, which is be who He called me to be in the world. That's how I interpreted that for myself.
Yeah.
And so that didn't mean joining a religion. You know, they tell you Bible-based church, all of that, and I appreciate all of that. Well, what it really was that I had two boys in dark bodies who I wanted to be an amazing mom for, and I wanted to be there. And after reflecting on how everything I did was to get the attention of my mother, who didn't have the capacity to give it to me, I had to understand that as much as I had held a grudge against her, that I started to be her. Because even though I was present, they had a roof over their head, clothes on their back, food on the table, I still wasn't fully present. And I wanted to be that for them. And the only way I could do that was to work on myself. So I did go to recovery, inpatient at first, outpatient, because the use of drugs is just a symptom of a deeper issue.
Right.
Substances, you're using it because there's something deeper going on. And whether it might be a undiagnosed mental health issue, or just to cope with the trauma you experiencing in your daily life, to check out. And so I went to recovery. I had a sponsor. I worked the steps. I went to therapy, which I didn't trust. Going in and out of the foster system, having those white women show up at your house, having your mama tell you everything that happens in the house, stay in the house, you don't talk to nobody. I didn't trust a therapist. But then I became open to therapy because I knew that there was more, and that therapy was also provided by God. And so I really did it all for my sons. I'm still doing it for them now. I'm a grandmother too. So I'm doing it for the next generation of powerful women leaders in my family. And at some point I want to do it. I want to be doing it for myself. And I'm trying to figure out what that looked like now. What that looked like now in life. And I'm not perfect. I'm only in 16 months. My first 11 months in office was rough because I'm not perfect. I'm traveling around with scars. I get triggered. I
Right.
react to
Right.
fear, and so
Right.
I got a lot that I need to still work on, but I'm cleared and I'm qualified.
Yeah.
I
As
love
we
it.
all do, as we
Wow.
all do, we all have issues. And that's why we have this show. Let's talk about them. No perfect people allowed. If you're, out there proclaiming that you don't have an issue, you're telling a lie. And so we just like to deal with the real. And as a sitting city councilor, Tamisha, we know that there's only so much you can do because legislation has to be passed in your district in terms of gun violence, because you know that what it does to our community.
Right.
What is being worked on in your district that is making a difference in the streets in your community in terms of gun violence that maybe can be copied in other districts?
Yeah, so when I bought my home in Antioch in 2015, because yes, I became a homeowner.
All
um,
right,
That's
all right, all
huge.
right.
like
Huge.
uh,
Didn't
that
you tell me
part
that was
from
first generation, Tamisha? Didn't you tell
yeah,
me you're the first in your house in
yeah,
your family? That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, from homeless to home ownership. Like
Mm.
when I first moved to Antioch, not even 4 months, there was a shootings up the street from my house. A couple years later, my son tried to go to the store with my granddaughter, and he almost was robbed. But before then, the city of Antioch has had issues around gun violence increasing and rising. There was work being done by a faith-based organization and pastors in Antioch for 10 years. Ceasefire, walking to reduce gun violence, trying to work with the police department, trying to work with the city, trying to pull down resources, trying to warn the city of Antioch, its residents, and its elected leaders that gun violence is coming. It's already here. How do we get out in front of it? How do we build community? How do we stand together as a community? How do we get local government to do policy right, to have a morally balanced budget that's investing in violence intervention and prevention? And how our police department responded to violence in a way that's culturally appropriate for our communities, because some of our family members are the perpetrators and the victims. So how do we work through that? And so I've been here since 2015. And even before then, it was a struggle to get local government to focus on gun violence in the city of Antioch. They pretended like it wasn't an issue as long as they had police on the street, that they didn't need to do anything else different. When Richmond, California had over 350 officers, they still had upwards to 45 to 75 homicides a year. More police on the streets is not going to prevent violence. You have to do something more. And so after being involved in ceasefire, the Office of the Neighborhood Safety in Richmond, learning about peacemaker programs, and the real investment in the people who are most vulnerable, who could be at risk or commit the gun violence, we learned how to do violence intervention and prevention. Get out in the streets, get out in the community, come out of the church, come out of the house, get out there. Don't let people operate in silence, because when you do that, the violence takes over your community. And so when I got elected, my number one commitment was to bring CalVIP money, California Violence Prevention Intervention funding, to the city of Antioch. We can fund programs like Advanced Peace to target those individuals, reach out to them who are most at risk of being a victim or a perpetrator of gun violence, and say, what do you need to turn your life around? Or at the least, what do you need to not shoot in the community? And then there are efforts like Ceasefire, where it is a partnership with local law enforcement. And the deal is, if we have available resources, take them. If not, if you commit an act of gun violence in the community, you're going to have to take a time out. That might look like prison time, but you're still a part of our community. And when you come back, guess what? We have a large fight around decarceration and reentry. And when you come home, there'll be plenty of resources to help you not go back to that life, but just please don't shoot. And so right now, we apply for the CalVIP funds. We're working with Nick Jr. We're working with Advanced Peace, Bonafide Sisterhood, other organizations that are ready to step up in Antioch and reduce this violence and serve our most vulnerable folks. We also have a new Office of Public Safety and Community Resources in the city, which I brought to the city because you need a place that's within the city that's going to be about pulling down resources do violence
Right.
prevention, intervention, and coordinate resources. You can't keep asking me to make a choice, but give me no choices to make. And so I think
Right. Right.
what I brought to the city, and of course there are a lot of other things we need to do around public policy and quality of life as well.
Ooh, that's a lot. That's a lot. Chrisette is on the line. She has a question. We have Larry and Robert who want to chime in. Gloria's coming in the conversation. We're going to fit it all in when we come back from the break before we finish. We got issues for real. I mean, we really have issues, but this is what I know. Issues can be solved if you're committed. So stay with us. We'll be right back. We're back. We're back. This is a heavy conversation. And the thing that I want to say, Tamisha, is we applaud you. I mean, the Force of Friendship, we applaud you for the work you're doing. Your story is a story. If we could just be repeated over and over, we would prefer that we could stop it from happening in the beginning. But when it does happen, truly, when you turn your life around, it makes such a powerful story that people can relate to at every different level. And so we applaud you for what you're doing. It is so good. We're going to go to our two callers back to back here. And then Chris, I'll pipe you in at the same time. Larry, can you please join in on the conversation? Thanks for calling. We got issues.
Yes, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We got you, Larry.
Yeah, I'm going to make it real brief. You know, you were making comments about individuals coming back into society and about all these things, about violence. You know, it's really something that is really a mental condition. You know, these guys out here opening fire on second and third.
Larry, do you have your radio on? It sounds like the radio's on. If you okay, all right. You can make it brief. It's hard to hear you. Please keep talking.
Okay. Well, can you hear me good?
Yeah, we got you. This is a little feedback.
Okay. You know, these individuals opening fire on 6-year-old kids. I mean, there's nothing that you can do to stop that because they're not going to do gun control, and it all boils down to cowardice and mental illness. And these things constantly happen on a regular basis, and it's sad. It's sad. It's just sad. There's nothing they can do about it because they're not going to stop this. They're not going to stop it where an 18-year-old can literally go into a store and buy an automatic weapon, a weapon of war, and go in with body armor and kill 6 to 10-year-old kids. I mean, try to put your brain on that. This stuff happens every other month, and yet they sit there talking about gun control, and they're not doing nothing. And then the worst thing about it is they have instances where the guys are getting warning signs that we're about to lose it and go off, but yet they still don't. We're in trouble.
Larry, I want to thank you for calling in, and I know that any good gun violence policies, whether they're at the federal level or any level, has got to include, I think everybody agrees, funding around mental health and definitely funding around the alerts, the things, social media gives you alerts. There's all different ways. And how is that handled to stop someone from being able to purchase a gun or to do a house visit or whatever that looks like? How can we navigate that legally? And then we've got to even think about if it goes all the way up to the Supreme Court, we have to have a Supreme Court that will uphold a righteous gun laws that would handle this. Thank you so much, Larry, for calling in. I'm going to jump right over to Robert. Robert, thank you so much for calling. We got issues. We appreciate your story as well.
Thank you,
Robert?
Yes, I am. Thank you. I'll make this real brief. Thank you guys for the opportunity to speak. And I would like to say congratulations to Tamisha for all of the things she's overcome and all the things she's accomplished. But I'll make this quick. One of the things that I feel that contributes to a lot of the things that we face today in terms of the violence from individuals is the trauma that a lot of people experience. So my question to Tamisha, as it relates to the work she's doing in her community, has there been any program looked at or implemented in terms of addressing a lot of the trauma that a lot of the youngsters experience at home, and looking at ways to help them transcend that and channel the anger, frustration, or whatever emotions that they're dealing with in a way that prevent like the violence that they're dealing with today?
That's an excellent question, Robert. And Tamisha, you referred to trauma that you personally experienced. Can you answer his question?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we got you.
Question, the first thing I had to realize that I experienced trauma. And so one of the things is that it's complicated because there are organizations out there who are helping. They're in the trenches. They're in the community. They are the people who at one point were a part of the problem, but now are part of the solution. And they are using what we all call trauma-informed practices. But what are trauma-informed practices? And do folks understand the language of trauma? For me, I didn't know that violence wasn't natural. I didn't know that the way that I was living in my family and in my household was abuse and was trauma. I thought that was life, that's what it was, and that's how it was. Until I learned that actually, no, it is not natural. It does not have to be that way. And that I wanted to have the power to change it, right? And so when I say when we have programs that are working with young people, and we're talking about community violence, right? We're not even talking about the mass shootings, because in my opinion, that's something else. That's something else. And somebody said to me today, it was like, oh, well, he was a person of color. Well, people of color could be co-opted into white supremacy and can also carry out acts of violence that are absolutely evil and not particularly for nothing other than to serve white supremacy, patriarchy, and capitalism. I'm very clear on that. I'm clear on what the mass shootings are about and what we have to do to handle those. And I'm also very clear on what we should be doing in our communities. And the first thing for me is people have to understand that what they are experiencing is trauma, and that it is not natural. And that once we help people identify who they really are in the world, then they can opt into that. And that's what I think has happened with a lot of our young people is they haven't been allowed to be who they are or know who they are, absent the influence of violence and a culture that has absolutely taken all the resources from them and invested in locking them up and keeping their communities violent. So I think when we have conversations about trauma in the community with young people and people involved, we use language that resonates. We talk to people about how they live in is not how most of them don't want to live that way. We don't understand. It's like I talk to youngsters every day. Most of them don't want to be out there.
That's
And
good to
yet
know.
we
That's good to know.
haven't figured out how to build anything that will give them a clear, safe
A
choice
choice.
transition.
Gloria, I want to jump you in. We just have a few more minutes, and wow, I know you want to
Wow,
add
this has
something.
been an amazing conversation, an amazing story. So my question to you is, as you talk to the people right now today, where we're staring down at gun violence and we're looking at mass shooting, and you're in the political side of things, when you're saying, and you're just free to say whatever you want, you're saying to the people, what is it that they should do right now? Is it writing? Is it calling? Is it gathering? We've got a Black woman running for governor in the state of Georgia. I mean, we got some big things going on right now, and all these things are going to eventually touch the things that we need to touch. But if you were to talk to the people right now sitting on the side where you're sitting, what do people need to do that maybe they're not doing or they haven't been touched to learn to do yet to help the political movement?
The folks who are in political positions already, or those of us in the community who had a power to also drive them to make decisions?
Those of us that in the community that have to push our political
Yes, yes.
forward. Agenda.
Don't press us. Apply pressure. It's okay to press me. I'm not gonna break.
Right.
Like
Yep.
I'm not gonna break. Press me. Show up, email, call, get out in the community, or organize, and make demands around what need to happen with your political leaders. You also have the authority to vote too. The thing I like about democracy is that if we actually got involved the way we know we want to, then we would put people from our communities in there who have the direct experience, who have the solutions, who've been on the front line with us. So when they get in that boardroom, they're gonna hold the line. And I think what I've experienced in this position is that you either have people in elected office who are so disconnected from the experience on the ground that even the policy moves they making ain't right. And then you have people who were on the ground, but now they're in a political position and they just want to get reelected, and so they become weak.
Right.
And they become weak and they lack backbone and they don't stand up no more and they don't speak out because they're afraid that they want to be at the middle. They want to get reelected. I don't want to be in the middle. I would love to get reelected, but I would also be happy being a one-term candidate, knowing that I stood up for the community.
Right.
Tamisha, and I just want to say your story is amazing to everybody that's out there. Running for office is not for everyone, but I bet you that there are some people that maybe, including yourself, probably didn't think about it 10 years before you ran, but now you are in position of making a difference, and getting the right people in the right position makes a difference. Thank you so much. This is an issue we could talk about over and over, and we pray and believe that we won't just talk, we will act and make a difference. Thanks for listening to We Got Issues today, and we will see you tomorrow for another episode of We Got Issues. Bye-bye.